Yes, we are standing in His presence. We are standing in His presence on holy ground.
On Holy Ground, the story of a hurricane in Peace River Presbytery. And Moses led his flock and came to Horeb, meaning desolation. And God said, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. On Friday, August the 13th, 2004, Hurricane Charley slammed against the southwest coast of Florida, smashing homes and rendering thousands homeless. This is a brief account of damaged lives and property. But this is also the story of our connectional church through Peace River Presbytery reaching out in God's name to heal, to rebuild, and to claim this damaged ground as holy ground.
We came to the church office to see if the church, anyone had come into the church to organize anything to help the community. And as of Wednesday, no one had. So
probably a lot of people were just still in shock.
Sure, and a lot of people were afraid to go out on the roads because there was so much debris and so much traffic. But I mean, and wires down, right, and flat tires. We got several. You'd get flat tires just going out.
But our big concern though was our workers. We work a lot of Hispanic people, and we had 4, I think, that were totally destroyed. Their homes were totally wiped out. They had nothing but a shirt on their back.
There are 5 main emphases of the Hurricane Task Force. The first one is to support, facilitate, and assist the work of our rebuilding coordinator as he helps with the work teams that come from within the Presbytery as well as throughout our country. We also have a strong Presbyterian presence in the affected communities and counties by working directly with their Unmet Needs Committee. Our second area emphasis is financial oversight. We distribute designated and undesignated funds for those affected congregations and individuals. Our third major emphasis is public relations and media. It is very important for us to be able to tell the stories of those affected, tell the stories of those who come from throughout our country, and the impact that they have in helping, and what they get out of giving of themselves to help the healing process. We also use this communication as a way to lift up some of those concerns that we need to continue our rebuilding, particularly our financial resources. We always will be in need, at least over the next 3 to 5 years, to continue to financially support the rebuilding efforts. Our fourth area of emphasis is spiritual care for pastors, staff, congregations, and individuals. We know that recovery is a long-term process, and the task force committed to participating in the spiritual care of those folks. Our last area of emphasis, when we're just really beginning to look at that, is can we as a task force be a better resource to our congregations within the presbytery as we plan for the possibilities of future disasters.
The aftermath of the hurricane. The presbytery immediately organized to respond to the tremendous need caused by the hurricane forces. Reverend Jane Jones Norris organized for responding to spiritual needs.
What we did after Hurricane Charley is to organize the Stevens ministers and the deacon boards from each of the congregations that were willing to volunteer. They came to the presbytery, and what we did is, by mapping both Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, we split the volunteers into groupings, and they went out to find the members of the congregations that were affected that we didn't have knowledge of their well-being. And so what we did is we went out and we went through the membership lists and found those who were most affected, and found out what their needs were. And then Punta Gorda, First Church Punta Gorda and First Port Charlotte, the congregations that we cared for. All the other congregations that helped in some way, some by phoning, doing phone banks, many by really canvassing day after day. We really had to canvass the area because with no street signs, you wouldn't think so, but it's very difficult to locate where people really are, which before was easy. But many that came and volunteered to do that for about 3 weeks after Charley.
Reverend Larry Graham Johnson was hired to coordinate the rebuilding.
My name is Larry Graham Johnson, and I'm the rebuilding coordinator for Peace River Presbytery. What that entails is a lot of aspects, beginning with finding the clients, those who have been assessed financially for their resources or lack of resources, and then finding out what their needs are in terms of construction. It's a very difficult time in the lives of people. Many times during the assessment period, they have to open up their lives to all kinds of things that wouldn't normally, they wouldn't normally share with folks. But it's a critical time for us to make sure that we have the resources to use to rebuild their homes. Our clients are at this point in time becoming a little more anxious. It's been 6 months since Charley hit. And as some of them look around their yards, their neighborhoods, things don't look much different than it did a week or two after the storm. And so we're dealing with a lot of emotional issues as well. This is John Olick, one of the survivors of Hurricane Charley. And John, where were you when Charley hit?
I was back in my bedroom holding up the wall.
Holding up the wall. Did it work?
Yeah. When it first happened, I was scared to death. There was no place to go. Sometimes it upsets me if I remember. I lived in a shelter. I lived in my car for a couple of weeks because there was no power or nothing. And then they opened the shelter up. The Red Cross opened the shelter in Port Charlotte. And I stayed there for about a month until I was able to get back in here. They put the power back and they started the water, but you had to boil your own water. Then they...
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Take your time.
Then when the crew from Flint came down, Larry brought the crew from Flint, Michigan down to start on my roof and everything. They were like help or whatever, you know. There's no contractors around. You couldn't get anything. You couldn't get shingles. There was no shingles in town, right? Everything was sold out, you know. And everything was impossible. But I finally found the shingles and got the help in here from Flint, Michigan, and they were like angels. Yeah, yeah, they were like Charlie's angels. Yeah, that's what I call them anyway.
Churches, as well as homes, were destroyed. First Presbyterian Church of Punta Gorda was one of these. Pastor Steve Mock speaks of God's presence in his tragedy.
The holiness in this act of the destruction of God's grace has just come out in huge measures. Sure, we've got a destroyed building, but God's people rose up. God's people responded and helped us in our time of need. And then God, in his own usual ways, timely, falling things into place, enabling us to find a place of worship that's ideal for us. And so if you take a look at the holiness out of the destruction, it's just, again, the grace of God flowing in greater measure than we ever experienced it before. And that's just taking the old and making something new out of it, which is what he's doing here.
Our volunteer work teams are very enthusiastic. They come down with a lot of adrenaline, with a lot of energy, and they're ready to work. But we also invite them to take time out to put the hammer down and to talk to the client and listen to the story. That's so important. The telling of that story is part of the healing. And one thing I always remind our volunteers is that 50% of what they do is showing up.
We volunteer because it's an opportunity for us to give back for all of the things that we've received during our life.
You're standing on holy ground. The ground Moses was standing on was a ravished, desolate, sun-baked spot. Yet it was holy because God was there, calling Moses to be transformed and to reach out to God's hurting people. In the hurricane and all the outer and inner desolations of each of us and of the world, in these storms, God calls the church today, take off your shoes, for you're standing on holy ground. Open yourselves to participate with me in my transforming work. We are standing in His presence on holy ground.